Zartan changes color in bright sunlight.
Zartan! Where's Zartan?
I don't know any Zartan.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read.
Hey, good looking. What you got cooking? How's about cooking something up for me? What's that got to do with Talking Joe? Nothing. It's me, Mark. Welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all of the details at the website. The website is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today, we are continuing our look at the Disavowed era of G.I. Joe with issue 31 and 32, Players and Pawns, part 4 and 5 of 5. And this was published back in 2004. These issues also contain the start of a backup story, Wraith, but we will leave that till next time. So without any further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, we have a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
Hello, Tim. I could hear them. And next up, it's G.I.J. Jay Cordray.
Howdy, Joe fans. Hi, Mark. Hi, Tim. How's everybody doing today?
Very, very, very good.
Are we excited?
Excited to talk, Joe. I noticed that in previous episodes, when we've had a little bit of a delay between the recording and releasing them, that some of the kind of the touchstones of what is new and exciting at the point of recording is a little bit out of date by the time the episode actually hits. So let's just put in some context for what we think will be exciting by the time this episode actually comes out.
My Christmas was great. I got everything I wanted, and for New Year's, I'm gonna watch the ball drop on TV.
Okay, that's New Year's 23 or 24.
I just got my pre-orders for Tomax and Zaymot and Stalker, which I'm still disappointed that he's gray. But yeah, so really excited, loving those figures, and hope everybody's had a good last couple of years.
Real American Hero, issue 300, the Larry Hama finale. Oh, what an exciting purchase this week at my store.
And who would have guessed that what is the most outlandish publisher that could have possibly picked up the G.I. Joe license? Who is it that publishes all of those sexy fairy tale books?
Xenoscope.
Xenoscope?
Yeah. Who would have guessed that Xenoscope got the G.I. Joe license? And
did they?
Now everyone is sexy. So that's exciting. It's exciting
not,
left turn.
Not the craziest thing, since Nitho Diaz worked for Xenoscope, but before he worked for IDW on G.I. Joe.
I think John Royal does some of the covers as well. And in other news, isn't it crazy that they've pushed out so many of the classified figures now that they've now solicited the Ice Cream Soldier as part of their next wave. That's the one that everyone wanted in 6-inch.
I'm looking forward to the heavily rumored and confusing Python Patrol Ice Cream Soldier Target exclusive repaint.
That'd just be like all black. Like complete opposite of Python Patrol and Ice Cream Soldier. Like, it's so cool that we're getting a Kamakura figure, even though I still really don't care for that figure.
Wait, that's an actual thing as well.
Are we joking anymore? Okay.
Now we're talking about an actual mad thing.
That was an actual thing that happened. We got that figure months ago. But just the idea that they're moving outside of A-Raw is cool.
Did we see a picture of that? Did that go on screen?
Like a digital render.
Wow, I blotted that out of my memory. It's like
it was pretty plain. It was easy to do. Yeah, it was just like, it's just Kamakura's outfit, which is like green or something.
Yeah, it is really cool that we're getting the fan service in terms of, covering all of the bases, all of those key core characters and sort of skewing quite close to like the classic renditions. But at the same time, it is sort of quite exciting to get those left field kind of choices coming out, the ones that you wouldn't expect, or the touches and flourishes that are sort of just a step away and sort of building something new, and not just giving us exactly what we loved 40 years ago, but bigger.
Well, yeah, I'm loving it. Love them. I haven't got any. I got my second Sergeant Slaughter in, the Valaverse one.
Second, what are you doing with the second one?
Well, this is the one without a vest, and he looks a little less like the first one. The first version, I thought, just kind of looked frumpy. It was like a Grandpa Slaughter, It was like he should be on a rocking chair on a porch. But this one,
Grandpa Slaughter.
Yeah, it would be Clint Eastwood would play him in the movie. I got one more go around. No, you really don't. But this one is got the tank top on and just looks a lot cooler.
Okay,
Yeah.
There you go. What are we talking about today? It is issue 31 and 32, Players and Pawns, part 4 and 5. So the last bit of this particular arc. Story, Brandon Jerwa.
Brandon Jerwa.
Pencils, Tim Seeley. Backgrounds, interesting, Jason Millett. Inks, Corey Hampshire. Colours, Brett R. Smith. Letters, Dreamer Designs. Editor, Mark Powers. Graphic design, Mike Norton. Production assistant, Sean Dove. And military consultation, Andrew Swenson.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So the last couple issues only had one cover. For these 2 issues, we are back to 2 covers each.
And a third convention exclusive, actually, for 31. There was a cover C convention exclusive where artist Tim Seeley from G.I. Joe Collectors Club. It's an image of Zartan with a sort of laughing, maybe Japanese-inspired mask.
All right, so cool. So the cover for issue 31A has a red background and has Flint and Duke in close-up, engaging in fisticuffs. Flint has grabbed a healthy drapery of Duke's shirt, and they've each got a cocked fist, and Flint's eyes are closed. They both got gritted teeth. It's okay. I appreciate the occasional Joe cover that has no background but just a solid color, or almost a solid color. This has a little bit of a gradient, gets a little darker up top. This cover slightly looks back to issue 67 of the original Marvel run from 1988, which was the Ron Wagner image of Lady J punching Flint, and it's got a red background, but this sort of vignette circle, which looks sort of partly like a we're looking through a scope or a keyhole, and partly just like a colored decision to emphasize something. Anyway, back to the Devil's Due cover. So this slightly looks back.
and also potentially issue 77 as well, which is
yes.
the Lady J versus Zorana catfight cover.
Yes. Yeah, this is, in terms of composition, more like 77 and less like 67. I also like the challenge of the occasional G.I. Joe cover where there are no weapons, because as much as I want every cover to be a Mike Zeck drawing of 2 to 5 Joes like lunging left to right with their mouths open and one fist in the air and a machine gun firing that like signature Mike Zeck like yellow like muzzle flash with red streaking out of it. I think of that line sometimes from G.I. Joe the movie, the animated movie, where Falcon sort of goads Slaughter's Marauders into infiltrating Cobra Island without weapons, which is a great plot point, but also a way to like make that scene less quote violent unquote. Anyway, and then there's a little insert vignette on the bottom of 31A's cover, and it says also this issue. And there's a little excerpt of the cover B where you see the Talent Caldwell drawing of this new character Wraith from the backup. So 31A, it certainly would pop on a shelf, like at a comic book store. I don't know that it would like get me to buy the issue if I wasn't a G.I. Joe fan. 31B, I'll talk more about Talent Caldwell in the episode where we cover this Wraith backup story. But 31B has this new character, Wraith, standing front and center, palms out, and behind him or it are Scrap Iron with his visor up, and Major Blood holding his pistol, but his pistol sort of gets lost behind Wraith's hand. And this is a sexy cover. This is considering that no one is running or lunging or firing their weapon or their mouth is open in a snarl, this is a hot cover because it's drawn by a quote unquote hot artist. Like bringing Talent Caldwell to this comic book briefly brought a little heat to it. But where this cover doesn't work for me is there's this really dramatic overhead light on Wraith, which looks great. And Peter Steigerwald and Christina Strain are the colorists on this cover. Steigerwald colors sort of everything at Aspen and is known, in my mind, as the reason why anyone likes Michael Turner's art, because Michael Turner, to me, does like 35% of the work for all of his like very exciting covers in that like Batman Superman run he did. And then Peter Steigerwald comes along and like totally finishes it with his colors. And then Christina Strain, who is also credited as colorist on this cover, was a Marvel colorist for a while. She colored World War Hulk and then became a writer and stopped coloring comics. And she's great. But the highlight on Scrap Iron's helmet is as bright and contrasty as all the highlights on Wraith. And so that's sort of competing. And then Major Blood's robot arm or metal forearm and hand are at the same angle as Wraith's arm and are like equally shiny and busy. And so the color in this cover is somewhat fighting itself. For 32, the cover for 32A is Cobra Commander in his hooded outfit, black with a red cape and sort of cloak. And he's in some kind of prison because there's the signature like 1, 2, 3, 4 / scratches on the wall behind him. And he's looking up at us and he's got his fists forward and he's handcuffed. And there's sort of he's casting a shadow behind him. There's no copy, there's no type. And this cover does not indicate that there is a backup story. And it's a good drawing. It's, it's overcolored because it's 2003, 2004. There's too many highlights on Cobra Commander. The cover for 32B is sort of it is another Talent Caldwell cover colored by Peter Steigerwald and Christina Strain, and it's we're looking slightly up at Wraith, sort of from waist height. His face is turned away from us, and I think he's starting to disappear. I think I sort of remember that's what his power is. And I think he's starting to disappear because sort of in the bottom right corner where his six-pack would become his waist, there aren't any black ink lines, and there's a squiggly Photoshop-y color pattern thing. So I think this guy can like turn on his stealth mode. And the copy says, "The story of Wraith continues."
They've got 4 credits for that Wraith cover. Talent Caldwell, Jason Gorder, Peter Steigerwald, and Christina Strain.
Penciler, inker,
unusual.
Colorist, 2 colorists. I think either they're crediting. I think my guess is Christina Strain flatted the colors and then Steigerwald did all the rendering, or he started it, ran out of time, she finished it, or he did most of it and then maybe she did some of the effects. But this is a slightly compelling cover in that this is a character that we don't know much about. By the time you're reading 32, presumably you've read the backup in 31, right? For this episode, we haven't. But nothing's happening in this cover. So this feels very much like all of the Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men covers from 2000, 2001, 2002, where it's just like yet another drawing of Spider-Man swinging or on a building or like standing there dramatically. So I like the pose, but this cover does not ask a question, so I'm not compelled to pick up the comic book to discover the answer.
And issue 32 with Cobra Commander in handcuffs. It's quite bold. It's quite exciting cover. I guess it asks the questions: how did Cobra Commander get in handcuffs? But do you think it's a bit spoilery potentially? Does it give too much away?
I thought about that because is it the back? No, yeah, it's the back cover to issue 31, and although there's copy, it says "captured" across it in a slightly distressed military stencil font.
Well, there's your spoiler then. I mean, if they've already put it out.
So I think if I was to put myself, if I was reading this issue as it happened, I wouldn't believe that. I would think, well, that's a fake out because covers tend to be exaggerations. They never capture Cobra Commander. So, is it a spoiler? Yes. Does it act as a spoiler? I don't know. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, I think that, as you say, that fake out, just because it's got it on the cover, does that? Yeah, what does that actually mean?
Like, you know what? If this was a whole number anniversary issue, 50 or 100 or something, and if there was a little more copy and the drawing was slightly different, if like there's two Joes behind him with weapons drawn, and it's like, at last, Cobra Commander captured, I'd believe that. But also, I would buy that. I'd buy the hell out of that comic.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Whereas, issue 32, it's like, well, they're obviously not going to actually capture him. It's just issue 32. They're going to save that. It's not like anyone's going to die in this issue.
Okay.
Just a random issue to capture Cobra Commander in.
Yeah, this is part 5 of Players in Chess, or whatever the story was called. Jer was still laying some groundwork.
Okay, so let's find out what actually does happen in the events of these two issues with a plot breakdown.
Somewhere in the unfriendly skies, a bandaged Frankenstein's monster-looking guy gets loose and kills a Cobra Viper before an evil goatee doctor tells his evil female assistant to cut off the man's right arm. Evil female assistant smiles and the man is subdued by a trio of vipers. The man begs them to stop and swears he will kill them for what they have done. Meanwhile, in Badixstan, Dusty, Flint, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes arrive to assist Claymore with the coil operation. At G.I. Joe headquarters, Duke is questioned about the Sierra Gorda mission by Flint, Hawk, Ripcord, and Recondo. Hawk is angry that another Joe has run an operation without his authorization. Flint wants Duke kicked out of the Joe team. Duke tries to fight Flint. Hawk says the two men are behaving like children and tells Duke to get out of his sight. Just outside of Hays, Kansas, a team of Joes including Lady J, Shockwave, Widescope, and Law & Order are holding Destro until his trial. On Cobra Island, Zartan tells Cobra Commander that he is leaving and taking the Dreadnoks with him, and Cobra Commander says, "Anyone else want to leave? Now's your chance." The Baroness asks him if that's wise, and he tells her that soon it won't matter. In Badixstan, the Joes run into a group of Cobras, Overkill among them, and a fight ensues. With CoverGirl and Crosshair providing cover, Hawk, Roadblock, Flint, and Lady J move Destro to Washington to await his transfer to the United Nations. However, once behind closed doors at the UN, Destro tells the representatives from 12 UN member states that his company sells arms to 10 of the 12 and has a sale pending with the 11th. Destro proposes a deal: Cobra Commander for his freedom. In the Florida Everglades, Zartan is greeted home by an unexpected guest, Dr. Mindbender. Mindbender tells Zartan that both Cobra Commander and Destro are seeking the same treasure, but only he's had the map all along. The what? Back in Badixstan, Overkill is about to crush Claymore's head, but Scarlet intervenes, shooting the cyborg in the back. Snake Eyes ineffectively attacks the monster, and Scarlet shoots him in the back for a second time. Overkill tells Snake Eyes that he was the Saw Viper who killed his friends in Trucial Abysmia and begs Snake Eyes to kill him. Snake Eyes refuses, but when he stands up, only to find the surrounding Crimson Twins and a handful of Cobra soldiers. Back in the Everglades, Dr. Mindbender tries blackmailing Zartan with the knowledge of his brother's betrayal of Cobra, but soon finds out Zartan is not a person to be messed with. On Cobra Island, Cobra Commander tells Baroness he's going after Destro. The Baroness is angry and reminds him that he left that decision up to her. Cobra Commander tells her he changed his mind and reminds her who's in charge. 77 miles outside of Washington, Duke, Hawk, and a group of Joes escort Destro north by train when, as Destro expected, they were attacked by Cobra. Duke apologizes to Hawk. Hawk tells Duke he's a good friend and a good leader. Don't lose that, he says. The Joes and Cobras have a massive battle involving his tanks, a Skyhawk, Trouble Bubbles, Baroness strikes a sexy pose, and Hawk and Cobra Commander get into a fistfight. Back in Badakhshan, the Crimson Twins release the Joes and tell them that Coil has been reabsorbed by Cobra. Back on the battlefield, Cobra Commander has gotten the upper hand on Hawk and shoots him in the back. Cobra Commander is then shot himself by none other than the Baroness. Enjoy watching it all slip through your fingers, Commander, she says. I know I will. The Baroness then tells the pilot to return to Cobra Island and signal Destro to meet her there. My husband and I have been apart too long. The end.
Thank you, Jay.
So these stories are a little shorter because there's a backup, but these comics are not any more expensive. Jurwa puts a lot in. Each issue has some scenes that don't work for me, that feel not like a G.I. Joe comic or not like G.I. Joe characters. And I know that I'm fundamentally at odds with some of the decisions that Devil's Due made. But when I was reading these two issues, I thought, okay, so when this comic originally started, I was excited. I didn't like the first issue. I wrote a letter, got printed in issue 3, and I stopped reading it around issue 10. And then I came back just for issue 21. And I've sort of, while we've been going through it, I've been thinking, well, okay, how would I have felt if I'd come back to it, like, 25? And I think I would have dropped it here. There's a lot of stuff that I like. I think Joe was making a lot of interesting writer decisions, and Seeley, mostly tells the story, and there's this attractive, in all these faces, I see Al Rio drawing like J. Scott Campbell. I just see like Al Rio's Gen 13 fill-in issues. And if you don't know who Al Rio is, he was doing a very good J. Scott Campbell impression in the middle 90s. But, I see the same, like a lot of like straight up and down body poses with like not interesting, like physical acting. And each of these issues had something sort of unclear for me. So, and maybe this isn't sort of a fair assessment, because if I had read these two comics when they came out, I would have read the backup story. So I'd have a little bit more to be intrigued by potentially. Whereas for this episode, I did not read the two backup stories. So it's interesting, but I've got some issues with these issues. And that's the name of my podcast.
Are your issues more to do with with the story themselves, like elements in the story, or just kind of the overall?
Some of it's character, and some of it is storytelling. But at a certain point, character becomes story. So, for example, the scene in 31 where Flint and Duke sort of come to blows. Duke's ready to like lecture. I thought like that's good writing. I didn't like that for G.I. Joe.
No.
And this line where Flint says on page 6, what makes you any different than Cobra? Flint's really angry with Duke. And I think there's something, in a Real American Hero, both at Marvel and at IDW, none of the Joes have any permanent beef with each other. And you could argue that makes for a less dynamic team book, because they're like always getting along. And it's sort of like the difference between Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Like, when Gene Roddenberry was in charge, or was partly in charge, he had this overall rule, which was that the core characters couldn't have any permanent beefs with each other. And with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Roddenberry was not involved, and there were like half the characters have serious problems with half of the other characters, and that makes for all these really dramatic character dynamics. So, and this is a way to differentiate Flint, because maybe he's arrogant, or maybe he's a jerk, or maybe he feels betrayed. And Jurwa is like stuck with Duke having been this spook, and I've just never gelled with it. And then the bit where in issue 32 where Scarlet, and I think Jay, you also, maybe we shouldn't jump ahead to 32, but page 2 where Scarlet hits Overkill on the back of the head with the butt of her machine gun. It's like, what? No, that's what the kid who's being babysat in a horror movie does when the slasher is about to kill the babysitter. It's like, stay away from my babysitter. And then the slasher knocks the kid away.
That's when I want to say, hey, Brandon, don't forget, I'm pretty sure garrote wire is listed on Scarlet's file card. Could you see if she'd have just come up behind him and been like, all right, man. But I don't know. I mean, he's a robot. Snake Eyes just kind of got thrown over his shoulder. Yeah, we'll give her that one. I mean, not hitting him with the butt of the rifle. I see what you're saying. She should have just laid it on full bore.
Yeah, she's holding a machine gun. I think she should use the machine gun. Now, you could argue it's well, she doesn't want to fire because it's point blank.
She might hit Snake Eyes, yeah.
But
but he's a ninja.
Know. Well, also, and she's kind of a ninja, and she's the 8th best soldier in the world. So, and she's awfully good at pinpointing with her crossbow.
Yeah.
So, and then in terms of storytelling, so my 3 sort of categories of challenges with these 2 issues: story, character, and then number 3 is storytelling. Okay, so here's 2 quick examples. On page 18 of issue 31, so the final story page, we cut back to where the Dreadnoks HQ is, and Zartan gets home, and in the final 3 panels, he enters some kind of room. I sort of can't tell. I guess in the first panel, it's all the way on the right side indicated that it's like a bunker. So he walks up to the door, and then in the first of these 3 panels, you see a bald Caucasian guy sitting in a seat, and he's mostly in shadow. And then in the second panel, you see some of his costume, and the bottom of his head is in shadow. And then in the third panel, the final panel of this story, it's revealed to be Mindbender. You see his glasses, his mustache. He's got his fingers up. He's smiling. And in these 2 panels at the end, he's got this very unusual costume. And I thought, oh, is this Mindbender version 2, his costume miscolored, like the yellow and purple costume from, what was it, 92? Or is he wearing some new costume that we haven't seen because this is Devil's Due? Or, oh, I guess he's wearing a Viper costume because he escaped Cobra Island previously. And I'm going to rely on Mark here to tell me if in that scene where Mindbender in a previous issue stops a Viper, does he say take off your clothes?
I think the last we see of him is basically he's being sort of chased down by a pack of vipers.
Okay, so
after he was left behind, after he fell off the back of that,
he did shoot a viper, but then he ran into the woods. So
I'm okay with him wearing a Viper costume. Where I have trouble is if you're going to go to the trouble of revealing this character, and it's a dramatic surprise and a fun surprise. Not only did Mindbender get away, he got to here, and he's got something in mind for Zartan, and he's smiling. That's great. But if he's wearing a Viper costume because he killed a Viper and took their clothes, and that's how he escaped, why would you make it so hard to figure out what it is that he's wearing? It's pull the camera back and show me his costume. That might require him to be standing up, or that might require a different dialogue where he's I barely escaped Cobra Island and look what it got me, this pair of new duds. Maybe half that dialogue if that's a little bit too much.
I mean, we do see it. We do see the costume a little bit in more detail. It's sort of
in the next issue.
In the next issue, yeah.
Right, but in theory, I'm reading issue 31 in June. It actually came out in June of that year. According to the Devil's Due news page. So it's I don't know what he's wearing, and so the final panel leaves me with this question: wait, what is Mindbender wearing? Is he wearing some? And then the dialogue.
Welcome home, Zartan. I hope you don't mind. I had to take some nasty steps to gain access to the room. It's quite a mess in the kitchen, I'm afraid.
What are you talking about? I act like, okay, I think what he's saying is he hurt a dreadnought in sneaking in, but like, what? Like, this isn't like it's Santa Claus and he's like, sorry, I broke the chimney on the way in. It's like, oh, right, we all understand how Santa gets into your house. It's like, well, Mindbender's never talked about kitchens. It didn't occur to me that this weird dreadnought, like, military compound has a kitchen. Like, oh, I guess it has a kitchen. And I appreciate Jerwa writing some dialogue to create a little bit of story for what Mindbender's been doing before he like sat in this chair and like, I don't know, waited for like 10 minutes or like 6 hours for Zartan to show up so he could dramatically like surprise him. But like that dialogue just sort of, it's just underwritten enough that it's like, wait, am I supposed to, is there a specific dreadnought or dreadnoughts that he harmed, or did he just like knock over some dishes? And again, I'm sure this seems like I'm nitpicking, but like on the last page of the story, I'm reading the second to last panel and I sort of get distracted because this doesn't seem to relate.
Wait, has
wouldn't
Dr.
be as exciting if he said, "There's quite a mess in the library, I'm afraid." I killed the librarian dreadnought. What?
Yeah, Mindbender, have you killed a dreadnought chef, or have you just made quite you've made some pasta and you haven't washed up the pan afterwards?
You didn't clean up after yourself.
So, okay, here's a question. In this final panel, just to the left of his fingers, there's 3 little spots of, I think, blood on, it's like red blood on like red viper vest.
Right.
So I don't know if that's, I guess, the viper that he harmed in order to take this costume and then escape Cobra Island, or if this is whoever
he dreadnought cook's blood
hurt in the kitchen, or it's like ketchup, or
tomato
it's
sauce,
like,
yeah,
or it's like dirt and it got
jelly.
Miscolored. And
bolognese.
Like, clearly, I have read too much comics, and I care about comics too much if I'm like letting myself get so distracted asking like 6 questions on the final panel of this comic. But I think there's this rule in prose short story writing, like not a novel, not a novella, but a short story where it's like 10 pages or like 30 pages, and that is like every single detail has to count and nothing should be in the story that doesn't count, because you don't want to like distract your reader because it's not a novel. And a 18-page comic book story is a short story, and these final couple of panels have all of this, like, not, I wouldn't say unnecessary detail, but like detail that I don't fully see the connection. And I want to see the connection. So it's not like I'm reading this and I'm like, how dare you, Brandon Jerwa? And then I tear it in half. I read it and I'm like, huh, aw.
I quite like Mindbender turning up in that Viper costume because
I thought this was a great cliffhanger.
He was, chased, being chased on Cobra Island by Vipers. He's clearly sort of taken them out and sort of dressed himself up as a Viper as part of his escape plan from Cobra Island that, we've not necessarily been clued in on the minutiae of how that exactly happened. Yeah, quite a mysterious cliffhanger.
But you just used a key word. You said clearly dressed up like a Viper. Is he clearly dressed up like a Viper, or is he dressed up like a Viper because you're a Crazy Joe fan and you can tell a Viper costume from just the shoulders?
I didn't even think about what he was wearing. Honestly, I was like, because I read it and I'm thinking, are seeking the same buried treasure. What the hell is he talking about? I was so confused by what he was talking about. I was like, what? That's the end? And I just thought to myself, I was like, if I was reading this month to month, I would have been like, I gotta wait 40 days or 30 days. I'm like, come on, I'd be every week going in the drugstore hoping that they released it early. Wanted to find out what happened next and what the hell Mindbender's talking about. And Heartbreaker or Heart-Wrencher appearance.
I do wonder if Jerwa, in writing the main story, had a hard time crunching what might have been a 22-page story down into 18 pages for issue 31, because the backup, which he also writes, but it is a different story.
I think the outfit is more obvious when we see it in issue 32 for the second time. And I was going to point out as well that the Viper uniform is it's the red top Viper, which is version 11 from 2003, rather than the slightly more, I guess, iconic original black version 1.
Yeah, and we see this red top Viper on page 2 of this very issue.
Yeah, and it's the Viper that they are using, so so it makes sense from continuity, consistency point of view.
I don't think that Jerwa had a problem with space, because I think if he needed to cut out space, he could have cut something out of that action scene in the desert. Probably he could have probably taken a page out of there. There's a lot like that goes on for 5 or 6 pages. It's good. It all works pretty well. Like you said, we could have left out the Snake Eyes and Scarlet part. They could have been completely left out of this issue altogether. Yeah, they didn't add anything to it.
Yeah, we had, and Tim talked about this a bit earlier, that we had a lot of fallout from the previous mission again, which seems to be a bit of a theme. For this, that you have a mission, then they come back, Hawk has a go at them.
When Tim was, started talking about having problems with the story, that was what I was thinking. That was really my biggest thing, and it kind of has been ever since Jerwa introduced this. Just the conflict between the Joes. I always just kind of view the Joes as the most professional, the most, they're the grown-ups in the room. They all have a job to do. They're not going to argue and bicker with each other. And when I was reading the last issue where Duke does that, I guess I didn't catch that his part in that was unauthorized. Like, I was reading it and I just kind of thought that, well, that was part of the mission. But then later I went back and I was like, okay, well, that explains the scene where they said, hey, Duke's, we can't get Duke's communicator. And they're like, well, see if we can, raise him or something. Where's he at? And the next time he turns up, he's in Sierra Gordo. But as I was reading the mission itself, I just kind of thought that was the same. That was all part of the mission. So then when we get to the scene where Hawk's chewing him out, I was kind of like, I think probably the way that you just said, Mark, I'm like, well, every mission that they come back on, somebody's getting their ass reamed for it. And it's like, they're just, I don't know. I don't like that. I didn't like the, and I kept thinking to myself before I got to the finale of this story, I was like, okay, so this problem between Hawk and Duke is what I would consider a B plot. And I was like, I'm liking everything in the A plot, but I'm really, really not liking the B plot. And I was afraid of what was going to happen when the B plot became the A plot. And it did just kind of resolved itself, between scenes, which I was fine with. But also I was like, if you're just going to do that, if you're just between the, before the battle, they're just going to kiss and make up, then we could have done without all the other stuff. There could have been more stuff for the A story and left all that other stuff out.
And there's a moment in the story when sort of Ripcord, who had been on that mission, sort of has a bit of a go at Duke as well, and he says, "You're not Duke anymore." No, there's a pause there. You're not Duke anymore. You're this man that I don't really trust, and I really don't like. That bothers the hell out of a lot of people these days, and it's not just me. Emphasis in bold for those words. And I've heard Brandon Joe talk about this before, actually, that there was a kind of a subplot that he was progressing that didn't really, he wasn't allowed to take any further, but he was, I think, trying to hint here that that it might be that Duke isn't actually Duke, that he's some sort of imposter Duke and is acting out of character. And yeah, I don't believe that he was allowed to take that sort of germ of an idea any further. But I think that's part of what he was trying to be built out in these scenes.
Well, geez, they should have let him. That would have explained this stuff. It felt like an intervention, that scene. It was like Duke walks in, and then they're all like, "Hey, we need to talk about your CIA stuff." I was like, "Oh, okay. We don't trust you." I'm like, "What the hell am I reading?"
And actually, talking about sort of tempering Brandon Joe's vision here, we've got a credited editor for the first time, I believe. We've got editor Mark Powers, whose name is appearing for the first time in these issues as a credited.
Can I jump in? So in the back of issue 31, the Devil's Due news page has a picture of him, and there's a tiny article which says, "Former Marvel editor joins Devil's Due."
I thought the name was familiar.
Devils Due just became more powerful, or rather powersful, as former X-Men editor Mark Powers takes on the role of DD's senior editor. And then they make a mean joke about the animated G.I. Joe the movie. So this would be an interesting question to ask if we get Brandon Jerwa to join us for an episode. How writing this comic was different in his first half year versus once there was an editor. You know, was he doing the same things, but now instead of Blaylock saying, "I'm busy, sure, go ahead," did Mark Powers say, "Well, I don't know, let's talk about it"? Or, you know, was Mark Powers less of a, that's my Mark Powers impression, by the way, everyone. Or was Mark Powers, was he, you know, less of a, like a content editor and more of a like traffic coordinator, just like, you know, getting all the moving parts? You know, was in Jerwa's estimation, was Powers, did he have story strengths? Was he like knowledgeable with G.I. Joe? These are interesting questions I would like to answer. I want to point out something else in the storytelling that sort of confused me. So
can I talk about one of my confusions first,
Yes.
maybe, Tim, and you return to this?
Yeah.
So part of this fallout was they talk about Dart and being in psych leave. He says, I think it's Zap talking. Dart is on emergency psych leave. It took 3 Joes to hold him down while he was having nightmares. When he's awake, his hands just start shaking uncontrollably. It was his first mission with the team. Quite an impression we've made, huh? Which I guess gives some colour, but in terms of when we last saw Dart, he didn't necessarily seem all that shook up. Did
the mission go that badly from
I didn't think that it went that badly. After I read that, I regretted having my sister pick up that Dart figure. I was like, oh, come on.
So again,
Toughen up, Dart.
I appreciate that Jerwa is adding all this color in his dialogue. Like in and of itself, that's an interesting bit of dialogue, and that adds a lot of drama to this scene. But it doesn't feel like G.I. Joe, and it doesn't. Does it track with the previous issue?
I don't believe so. Not in my opinion, anyway.
Mark?
Not for me. There doesn't seem to be an obvious through line as to how Dart was reacting.
Yeah, if you get to the G.I. Joe team, you have to have considerable battlefield experience, I would think. You know, that's why I always had a problem with the green shirts. They literally acted like people that had never been shot at before. You know, so he's got to have some experience. And if that was the worst thing that he's gone through, then she shouldn't have gotten on G.I. Joe. I mean, you know, some people got injured, nobody died. They lost, but they lose a lot of times. You know, it wasn't like a bloodbath. It wasn't like Trucial Abysmia.
And they kind of won in the end, actually, didn't they? Because
they got Destro.
Duke came and sort of...
Well, yeah, I mean, they won because of Duke's treachery, which now they're all saying, don't do.
So here's something in terms of clarity. So page 1 of this issue, it's all inside a lab, all red lights, this experiment, this like Frankenstein's monster is loose, and we don't know who it is. And it's Cobra, right? It's some Cobra, like it's some like beefy man who's been stitched up like Frankenstein's monster. And he's wrapped in bandages, and a bunch of guns drawn on him. And on the final panel of page 2, some of the bandages come down, and he says sort of like empty, dead, white eyes. And I can't quite tell if like the lower half of his face and his jaw, is it like robot metal, or like his skin's been ripped off and it's just like the sort of the pink musculature, but it's, you know, it's supposed to be cyborgy and grotesque.
Looks like Trapjaw.
Looks like Trapjaw. All right, so as a critique of Tim Seeley's like acting in that final panel on page 2, in the previous panel, 3 or 4 Vipers with police nightsticks are like holding down this guy. We don't know who this is. He says, "I'll kill you for this. No more of that." And then in the final panel, if you were to cover up the word balloon, he just looks fine. He just looks sort of calm. And there's like a Viper who's sort of like holding him up, like he stumbled a little bit. And it looks like actually the dialogue would be like, oh, thanks. I lost my balance for a moment.
Yeah.
Right. But
It does look like
instead,
that.
the word balloon is Gurg. And it's like, did I miss something? Did they tranquilize him? Or is this not the right drawing for this final panel? Like, he should still be like twisting and pushing and clenching his teeth and
gnashing his
like,
teeth, or
yeah, like, so I think Seeley doesn't push his acting and his poses enough. I think if he's working from, I can't remember if Joe told him if he's writing plots or full scripts, but I don't think Seeley's doing the best job like interpreting the plots, or he's misinterpreting some of the script. So I got to that panel and I thought, like, okay, that's not quite the drawing for this like story beat. Also, I still don't know who this is. And so then we flash ahead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 pages, 9 pages. And some Joes are in the desert. And there's this new Cobra character. And I actually don't know who this is, right? Like, I'm not all familiar with the 2003, 2004 toys. And I know this is a new toy from 2003, 2004. And I know it's a Cobra. And he's got like a machine gun, I think, for an arm. It's a little hard to tell because there's a word balloon in the way. But let's just say he's got a machine gun for an arm. And so this like Cobra guy with the mask and the white eyes and the machine gun for an arm in the desert at night, like attacks some Joes. And is it the next? He has this like long speech where he says who he is. Like, no one names him. Do they ever actually say overkill in issue 31? No, they don't. It's not until issue 32, right? Yeah, the first page of issue 32, where he has this long speech. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 word balloons, which isn't a lot for comics, but in a hand-to-hand fight is a lot for comics, right? It's I woke him inside a Cobra Airborne Bionics lab. See, I used to be a regular soldier. I killed a few of your guys back in Trussel Abysmia. Cobra Commander tried to recruit me, yada yada, Coil. Like, whoa. Oh, okay, so going back to issue 31. Oh, the guy in the desert at night with the mask and the white eyes and the machine gun for an arm, that's the guy from page 1.
yeah.
And like, yes, like I'm not a simple child. I do understand that this guy is that guy. But actually very little in the story connects this guy with that guy. And Cobra is full of robots and
Guys that look like that in the
guys
desert.
that look like that, whether they're cyborgs or not, like really exciting flamboyant costumes. Like, maybe they have robot arms, or maybe they just have like silver on their arms that looks robotic. And I really needed like one more bit of dialogue in the first scene.
Well, I think that it was supposed to be. I mean, he was trying to make that a reveal when he does. When he tells Snake Eyes who he is. I don't know whether I had flashed forward or whether I just kind of figured out that that's who it was, but it didn't seem like it was a surprise at all when I got there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like on that one large panel that you're talking about where he's standing in the desert, there's a lot of dialogue on that scene. It wouldn't have been any problem for that Viper to say, see, overkill, you're coming around,
Yes, please. Like, this gym shooter.
Or if he has another name, just, at least use that other name or something
No,
to differentiate.
No, call him Overkill. Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief at Marvel in the 80s, had this rule that every Marvel comic was someone's first. And so everyone got named and everyone's powers got announced. And it becomes onerous in a crowded book like X-Men. But it's true. And it can be clunky when in the middle of a mission, everyone's conspicuously name-dropping. But it is also helpful. And you could argue it's like, well, the only people reading issue 31 of G.I. Joe from Devils 2 are like definitely paying attention to the toys coming out around the same time in 2003, 2004.
True. Yeah.
And there, but that's also like maybe a small admission of a problem. And going back to page 2, the scientist does say, which arm did he choke the guard with? What? Which arm? Left or right? It was his right arm. Then cut it off. Like, okay, I do see a connection there. They're going to cut off this guy's arm. And then later in the comic, Overkill has, again, it's the elbow is covered by a machine gun. So I'm not quite sure if there is supposed to be a hand there holding this. Excuse me. The elbow is covered by a word balloon. So I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a hand holding this machine gun or that really is the elbow and his arm just continues as a machine gun. But name this new guy. Name this new guy. Say who he is. It's not like, don't assume that I'm going to read this all as one story in the softcover collection.
You know, on the other side, I don't have a problem with it being maybe a little bit of a tiny mystery, which is then resolved the subsequent issue. So we got this sort of guy being, you know, cut up at the beginning of the issue 31. We got this introduction of this new mysterious guy who we may not know is overkill based on how much attention we're paying to the toys that are coming out at this time. But at the beginning of the very next issue, it is very clear that it pulls them together. That guy who was having his arm cut off and was going a bit wacko is the same guy as that cool new guy in the desert, and it's also the same guy that we saw before from who was the Saw Viper who killed the Joes and we thought was killed by Snake Eyes.
Well, when did we see him last? What was his condition when we saw him last? Like, why did Cobra do this to him? Was he like terribly badly wounded, or
he was
this, like, some kind of
it was at the end of the Cobra Island battle, and he was escaping, and he was in quite a bad way, and he was saying, did he say something like, I need power or something like that, or he was sort of slumping down. Give me a second, I'll grab it, and then I can be absolutely clear.
I'll look and see if this is a figure.
It is.
Is it?
Jay, yeah,
is it overkill?
Yeah, it's overkill. There were. This is actually the 2003 recolor of the 2003 overkill. This design came out twice in 2003. The first one's like red, aqua, black.
What year did it come out?
The second one, 2003. The second one is desert colors.
Yeah, it's the version 3, the Spice Troops, which is the desert colors that we see in this issue. So the last time we saw him, he was making an escape from Cobra Island with Cobra Commander, and he says, I want power, and then boom, collapses. It looks like he's maybe got some gunshot wounds to his back or something. Yeah, in a bad way, and perhaps ripe for some medical. Oh yeah, he'd been shot in the back by Kamakura in that issue. There's a lot of shooting in the backs from the Joes. He was shot in the back by Kamakura. So yeah, I guess in a bad way, and potentially, yeah, maybe they saved him by performing some experimental surgery on him.
So, I think it's really fun that when this character shows up in this scene, he's in his. So that year, 2003, Overkill is released twice. The first one, it's like red mask, black and aqua body, and then later that year, there's like a desert version, and it's really fun that it's just the desert version that shows up for the first time in the comic because it's a desert scene. That's fun. I don't want it to seem like I think my analogy for these two issues is I'm driving a car and things are a little loose in the car. You know, like I hear a rattle and like the steering wheel vibrating a little bit because the front tires are out of alignment, and you know, like maybe the like odometer isn't working, and you know, like the windows and the locks are not power windows or power locks. Like it's a car, it's my car, it's getting me there, it can go fast, but it's like vibrating and it needs a big tune-up. And so I feel like with these two issues, there are many small and medium small things that aren't fully effective, are missing the mark a little bit. Like this is a functioning comic. I'm not like angry that I read these two comics, but it's like not quite G.I. Joe. It's not quite, you know, a together action comic. And so I want to trade in my car. The other thing that's weird for me in this issue is the scene where Destro delivers his makes his address to this council of world leaders. So I think the idea for this is great, right? That clearly Destro is going to outsmart Hawk. That, you know, from the point of view of Hawk and the Joes, they've got him, they've won. But wait, he gets to talk to some assembly? Like, oh no, this isn't going to go well. So that's great. All right, so you turn the page. There's this circle. There's this big circular table desk thing with all of these world leaders and people seated around it. Destro's in the center and he's addressing them. And Hawk is sitting on the left with his arms folded like grumpy. And Seeley definitely looked at a photo for this because there's lots of great body language with some of these seated politicians like leaning forward or leaning to whisper to other ones. That's really nice. And there's this nice 3 panels that's really one panel divided into 3 where Destro walks left to right past his lawyer. His lawyer shuts this giant book as Destro, right at the top of page 17, Destro like reveals his ace in the hole. Okay, so far I like it. So there's this like sort of Joker smile on Destro at the top of page 17, which is a little too much for me. And then also his lawyer is smiling, which I find too much. And then in the next panel, Hawk has his brow furrowed, his eyes closed, his teeth clenched, and his fist up, and he's saying, "Are you people actually hearing this blackmail?" And did you say
Hawk or Hulk?
Okay, when I got to this panel, I thought, oh man, like after, 5 issues of Tim Seeley, to my mind, not drawing enough oomph in these poses, now he finally looks at how to draw comics the Marvel way. So there's this book published in the 80s based on this like lecture that Stan Lee and John Buscema would give. There's a video of it. I think the like shop talk at Marvel came first, and then it was a book, and then it was a video. And there's this 2-page example in it where Buscema has drawn a 6-panel, 1-page continuity of Jonah Jameson on the phone, like yelling, and then someone crashes through the wall, and then I think Spider-Man shows up, and he draws it, and it's all very well drawn. It's just pencils, no dialogue, no color, just 6 silent quote unquote pencil pages, panels. And then he draws it a second time, and in every panel he like exaggerates the poses, more arcs, more up angles, bigger expression. Like when Jonah Jameson is like yelling into the phone. The first time he's just like leaning against the desk, like talking to the phone. And the second time he's like got his fist up in the air and his fingers pointing and he's yelling into the phone. And Stan Lee makes the point that in a Marvel comic, everything is dynamic and turned up all the way. And so I made this comment about a lot of these like straight up and down Tim Seeley poses, which I don't find exciting or dynamic. And I see this lawyer next to Destro and he's smiling. And I thought, no, the lawyer is like cool and collected. And if he's evil, it's like deliciously, subtly evil. And I immediately thought of the lawyer from the sort of evil lawyer from the Marvel Netflix shows. He shows up in Daredevil and I think Jessica Jones and Iron Fist. The actor is Danny Johnson and the character's name is Benjamin Donovan. There are all these great scenes he has with the Kingpin, and he's completely imperturbable. He's very smooth. Oh, he's in Luke Cage a lot because he's Mariah Stokes' lawyer, and he's super smart, and he's like 2 steps ahead, and he's like evil lawyer, and he doesn't like smile and show his teeth. He just like smirks and like says something devastating and walks away. And so these top 2 panels on this page where the lawyer's smiling, Destro's smiling, and then Hawk is like grimacing, just all feel like they're all turned up and down the wrong way and the wrong amount. And this is another example of sort of like, the car that I'm driving is like vibrating. It's like, I need to take this car in for a tune-up.
But you're right. With the other stuff, though, there's some nice body language. Look at all the people in the bottom 2 panels. They're all talking to each other. Yeah. The other ones are cranked up way too much. Again, that goes back to what do we think of Destro? I mean, the way that he draws Destro's mask and stuff just really looks like Destro's got a silver head. You know, like his ear and everything is defined, and lips are completely defined. There's musculature that goes all the way down to his neck, and it just looks weird, especially when you said, you know, he's grinning like the Joker. I don't know. There's better ways that it could have been done.
I've been very hard on this issue. Mark, are there some things about this issue that work? There's something that you can say that can balance my frumpy frowning?
I don't know. The issue 31 wasn't particularly my favorite, to be honest. The scene, it was interesting, the scene that with the Judicial Council of 12 different nations. My issues with that scene were entirely different to yours. I thought, yeah, the panel with the Joker face Destro certainly stands out, but it was more from the case of you've captured a dangerous criminal. What do you do with him? Yeah, you can convene that Judicial Council from 12 different nations to try him or let him go. You know, which is the thing that always happens. You know, from the news. It was that took me out a little bit. It's like, what? But yeah, when does that ever happen?
I had another. This is a continuity thing. So this 2-page scene with the Judicial Council of 12 Nations. So there's that big panel on the left page where I already described it. It's a big circular, long, round desk, and it's almost shaped like a horseshoe. And Hawk is seated at the gap, right? Okay. On the next page, there's this black guy with a blue shirt and a blue cap. And he says, "General Abernathy, this is not your forum." And then he dismisses Hawk, right? And I feel like he's the person in charge because he's the one person from this council who speaks. And he's the one who dismisses Hawk. And then in the final panel of these 2 pages, he's the one who says, "Okay," which feels like he's sort of agreeing for everyone. Mm-hmm. Okay. Couple problems with this. One, I don't feel like let's just basically this is the UN, right? It's not the UN, but it's basically the UN. Like the president of the UN or the sort of spokesperson for the UN, they don't say okay in a like after like a war criminal has delivered a sneaky sort of lawyer speech where they're getting out of it, but also giving you something worse that you want, right? You'd say, I declare a 60-minute recess while we ... deliberate. Like that, it's one word, and this word did not ruin the comic for me. But I got to this panel and I thought, oh man, that's not what you say if you're that guy on this council. The other thing is, where is this guy seated? Because
it's just like in the ring.
No, but look at the previous page, right?
I looked for it.
He's not there. Everyone in the previous page is wearing like a jacket and tie.
Yeah, he's on the bottom left hand side. There's a woman with like a bindi dot on her forehead, and then there's a guy with a turban, and then on the next page over, he's sat to the right of the guy in the turban.
But Tim means on the first panel with the U shape, all the people sitting around the U in that drawing look like they're wearing suits and ties.
That's the one taken from a photo reference that isn't consistent with the rest of the...
So again, let's compare the 2 pages. There are 2 panels which show Hawk's chair. On page 16, right, on the left side, Hawk is seated in a chair, and if let's say this circle is a clock and Destro's looking at 6 o'clock, right? And Destro's lawyer is at 3 o'clock, and Destro's back is facing 12. And so 9 o'clock is Hawk and the chair and that gap. Okay, let's go to the next page. So the table's a different size now. But anyway, the chair's behind Destro. So Destro's either at like 8 o'clock, but like, wouldn't there be the gap there? Where's that guy with the cap? So Seeley lost track of where everyone is seated around this table, because this sounds harsh, I don't think he ever knew where everyone was seated around the table. And this is a complex scene, and I would hope the artist who draws this scene comes up with a little floor plan. It's like, okay, well, this is where Hawk starts, this is where he ends. The guy who's going to speak from the council is seated here. I can establish him here on the first page so that we can cut back to him on the second page. We sort of know where he is. But the continuity of these 2 pages doesn't work.
And I hate to be the guy that sort of puts in another kick into this poor puppy dog Seeley art.
I'm waiting for this one.
But on the second page, where the guy in the hat is talking to Hawk, the panel that starts, General Abernathy, this is not your forum. It looks like that guy is now sort of like up in a gallery or elevated platform
like 10
or something,
feet up or something.
Like 20 feet up from Hawk. But everywhere else, it's kind of established that it's all on one level.
One flat room. That's what I was going to say. Spatially, there's problems. Whether you want to look at spatially or just perspective, but camera angles way off. I looked at that panel too, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not what the room looked like.
Okay, let's skip ahead to more exciting bits in the next issue.
I do want to point out, let me point out one little tidbit of Seeley art that I loved. And I kind of called attention to this in the plot breakdown. The doctor's assistant on page 2, she's like, he says, which arm was it, left or right? And she's like, it was his right arm. And then he goes through, cut it off, no anesthetic. Look at her smile in that second panel. She's evil. She's like, yeah, we're going to cut that guy's arm off. Like, she enjoys this. And you think, who are these people that work for Cobra? And this doctor himself is like, we're messing this guy up. But he's going to be awesome. But, we're messing him up. But he's enjoying messing him up. And it's like, they are a bunch of sickos. Anyway, that's my little observation.
Okay, so flick forward to the next issue. We've got quite an exciting action sequence. The Joes are escorting Destro on the train to his destination. And then there's an ambush from a Cobra armored column, and the Joes fight back. There's a scrap between Hawk and Cobra Commander, which ends up with Hawk getting shot in the back by Cobra Commander, and then Cobra Commander himself getting shot by Baroness, heel turn, and slumping onto his face. Not in handcuffs that we were promised on the cover, but not in a good way for either of the two leaders. What did you think of this big action set piece?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, the art isn't great, like we talked about. It's good enough. It's hurt again by the colors. I just think the colors are overdone. And it may not be as bad in the actual issues. I've got the paperback of this, and I'm also looking at digital issues. And these digital issues are really dark, just for this issue in particular. I don't know why, but it's lighter in the paperback. But still, there's just so much visually that confuses the eye when you're looking at it. And not to mention, there's a lot of word balloons on every page. But I thought the action was pretty good. I had to really look at the page where Hawk gets shot, because I read it and then I reread it and was doing the plot breakdown, and I'm going through and I'm like, Cobra Commander pulls the gun on Hawk. I said, but then, because I didn't just apparently forgot that I just read it and Hawk got shot, and then you have the next page with 8 panels on it. Baroness is there, and it's just kind of unclear. I was like, pow, and I'm like, who shot? Who shot Cobra Commander? I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I don't know. It works. I liked it. It would have been a little better if the art was better, and it would have been a lot better if the coloring was less.
I did struggle with both who shot Hawk and also who shot Baroness. The who shot Hawk should be more obvious, because Cobra Commander is stood over Hawk with a gun. He says goodbye, Hawk. Then there is a blam. But the sort of that shot with the blam, it's like a parallel line of like a bullet cutting through a blam, which makes you think it is like a horizontal sniper fire or something, taking Hawk out perhaps from a distance. So
could Baroness actually have shot them both?
I don't think she was supposed to have. I think it is that it is literally, Cobra Commander has shot him. It's just.
Is that what you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think Cobra Commander shoots Hawk and Baroness shoots Cobra Commander. I think, but I'm not sure if Jurawa is trying to introduce ambiguity so that we can have tension waiting for the next issue, and then there can be some mystery or reveal, or if Seeley sort of stumbled with this second to last page. I also think the pacing, so the two panels above the giant word blam, I think this works in a movie where you can have footage in slow motion and you can drop out the sound, like goodbye, Hawk, and then like, and Mayday's like, and Baroness is like squinting, and then blam, bam, 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 right, and then like slow motion. But in a comic, this does not work. Like the blam needs to be the top of the page, and the two panels with Mayday with her mouth open and Baroness looking resolute need to come down, or Mayday needs to be saying something like, no, look out, and like
Hawk, just screaming, anything.
And for me, that blam panel would work better if the line was not the horizontal line through, but maybe a diagonal left down to right with the Hawk body positioned maybe further over
or
to
even
the
just
to
not
the right.
have that silhouette of Hawk in there.
Yeah,
I would just not divide the word blam at all. Just take that white line. Like, don't have it diagonal. Don't have it straight left
just
to right.
Blam.
Also, in the second to last panel of this page with the giant blam, where Cobra Commander is getting hit for the first time, he's not holding a gun.
Yeah.
So
confusing.
Is that meant to be ambiguous? Maybe he didn't do it after all. Like, I guess he dropped it a moment ago before he would have been able to fire it if we thought he was the one who fired it. Or did Tim Seeley forget to draw a gun in his hand?
I think that's probably the case.
And also on that point as well, not only he's missing a gun in his hand, but also it's like fireworks are going off on his chest in those two shots. They're just massive explosions, as the bullets impact. Kapow, kapow. It doesn't quite read as a kind of long distance sniper fire from the Baroness.
Yeah, they're drawn very big, and then they're also colored not as like a solid yellow. Like if you smacked someone, you'd have a little like glint effect, but they're drawn with this like exploding
explosion
sun
effect,
textured orange. Like it looks the exact same on the previous page where Mayday is getting shot at from the Cobra helicopter, and there are all these machine gun shots behind her, and like, no, that's a much bigger gun on the bottom of that helicopter. I don't think those aren't explosive shots. They shouldn't have like glowing
that's what
orange.
I was going to say. Like maybe if they were, the only way they would look like that is if they were all like incendiary or explosive shells or something.
Yeah, it should
but
just be like
generally
brown.
not the case.
It should be like brown and dusty.
Yeah, should be dust. And
but at least like that's really big. Whereas whatever gun hits Cobra Commander is not that big. So this is one of those cases of the colorist getting like too excited. Like, no, not every. It's like, it's like a match and an explosion and like a light bulb. These things are all colored differently, both in terms of intensity and also like texture and effect.
And similarly, sort of about that missing gun and the clarity of the storytelling that results. Similar to that, so Cobra Commander's been shot by Baroness, but there isn't too many signifiers that let us know that, because the next panel after Cobra Commander's been shot, it's Baroness sort of, making her escape on the back of a tank, and which is driving into a transport helicopter, And the Baroness figure is quite small, and she's holding a gun, but that's against a similarly coloured background as well. So it's not like it's that close up of her holding the sniper rifle with a sort of smoking barrel. So it's, you know, ultra clear that, okay, she's the one that just fired. And then she's also chased by Mayday as well, who's looking almost identical to the Baroness.
In that first panel, if she'd had that little disc that she stands on that figure comes with, and she was just like up into the air, and in the second panel, she was getting pulled up into the helicopter. They missed out on another toy opportunity there.
Tell us about this disc. What is it?
The thing that she came down on in Rise of Cobra, and there was like 2 or 3 of the Baroness figures have came with it, even though there like is nothing to attach it to. It's just
Wait, this is a levitating disc?
No, it's a thing that has like a grappling hook in it, and they lower it from a helicopter. The figures, it's like there's a couple Baroness figures that have came with it. She stands on it, and they lower her down from a helicopter plane.
I want to go back to page 8. So the first panel of page 8, the Joes are on the train, and they're coming out from within the train to the like upper deck, so they're sort of outside. And Dart, who is drawn about the size of my pinky fingernail, is helping Hawk up onto the platform from the ladder. And Hawk says, "Thanks, Dart. You sure you're ready for this?" And he says, "It's my job to be ready, sir. I may have been down, but I'm never out." And I thought, oh, I'm glad that Dart is here, because the previous issue had a whole word balloon about how he's not doing well. So it's great that he's recovered. But wait, he seemed to be in terrible shape in the previous issue. Is this like is it too fast for him to go back on a mission? But also, considering that this character wasn't in the previous issue and didn't get shown, but did get talked about, and this is this character's reintroduction, he needs to be bigger. Like, I kind of need a panel with like Dart's hand grabbing Hawk's hand with a close-up of his hatch with the ladder, or like over the shoulder from behind Dart, and we're looking down at Hawk. And I can very clearly see both of them kind of big in one panel. And, I'm glad Dart gets worked back into the story, and not every Joe needs to be like drawn sort of big in a panel when we see them. But if a character is being introduced or reintroduced, I feel like there is that demand.
Yeah,
He's
maybe
not even shown again. I don't think after that. I'm just looking through there. I don't see him anywhere after that.
No, he's holding Mayday on the Blam page.
Oh, is that him? Okay.
No. Yeah. And then he's on the previous page. We see him from behind with an Uzi. He says, "Cobra Chopper incoming! Get those wounded under cover."
Yeah, but in neither of those panels do you get a good look at his costume. You never get a good look at his costume, or uniform, I guess.
So, you guys, what about this husband thing?
Yeah, so it's something like it's sort of mentioned by Baroness in one of her lines of dialogue. She says, "My husband Destro."
On the last page.
My husband and I have been apart too long. Something like that.
There it is. Yes, my husband and I have been apart too long, as she makes her escape.
All right, so
that's new. That's new news, right? We've not seen anything about this before. This is a wedding that has happened that has up to this point not been referenced.
Yeah, so there are 3 things happening here. One, Baroness is turning out to be more evil and smarter than Cobra Commander. So that's a turn, that's a surprise. 2, is she taking over Cobra with Destro? Is that what this final scene?
Seems like.
So, right, because someone says, "Orders, Baroness," right? "Coordinate our return to Cobra Island." So that's a big, exciting surprise, right? It's like we've had, Cobra Commander was in charge, and Serpentor came back, and there was the coil, and then Destro left, and Destro was about to turn over Cobra Commander, and then number 3, secret wedding.
Okay, so in storyline, at what point does Baroness become aware and accomplice to Destro's plan.
Presumably all along, right?
Full on Cobra Commander all along when he leaves without her and stuff, and she carries on about that. That was all a ruse.
Yeah, so when Destro abruptly left and didn't say anything about the Baroness, and Cobra Commander's like, okay, go ahead, leave. And then in our episode, I said, this is out of character for Destro. He should have consulted the Baroness. And then Mark said, well, Tim, I've read ahead and I don't want to say anything.
Yep.
Okay.
So that was this, Mark?
That was this. Yeah.
So do we take it a step further? Did Destro and Baroness set all this up together? Destro getting captured and Baroness letting Cobra Commander think she didn't care about Destro anymore so that she could let Cobra Commander get captured or something?
Something, yeah. I think something along those lines. It's been like a long play between the Baroness and Destro to do over Cobra Commander and wrestle control of Cobra.
Well, I to go back to my grumpiness about the previous issue and sort of these two issues together, I think this kind of is this technically a double cross? This reveal where where Baroness betrays Cobra Commander, dramatic, exciting. Like as a Joe fan, as a comics person, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, whoa, and like they really did capture Cobra Commander. I mean, the next issue it could be like, well, Cobra Commander got away, but. Or, the next issue could be like Storm Shadow sure is coming to get Cobra Commander, and Gung Ho's like, oh man. But that is less, that's minimized for me because I don't like that Hawk gets killed. When a bunch of Joes died in Trussell Abysmia in the Marvel run, it was shocking, dramatic, but it made me sad and a little angry. And when Joes had died previously, like when Mangler dies in Special Missions 13, I thought it was really moving, but like on page 1, I thought, oh, this guy's not making it through this issue. This guy's clearly been introduced to get offed by page 21. And, same thing with Cool Breeze a few issues later in Trussell Abysmia. That still made him a great character, but it's like, oh, this guy, this is not a toy. This guy's not going to make it through the issue. But hey, Hasbro, if you're listening, doesn't mean you can't make a Cool Breeze toy. So we come to the Devil's Due run. So I think the occasional death is really dramatic, but both a friend of mine and the guy who writes most of the G.I. Joe comics ever have said, I don't like killing characters, or I don't think you should kill characters. And it is dramatic, but it either sort of has to be undone in like superhero comics and then you sort of roll your eyes, or you can write yourself into a corner and like you may not be the only steward of these characters, and someone else may write this G.I. Joe comic after Brandon Jerwa, and if they have the best Hawk story in mind ever, they like can't use this character. And, we now live in an era where there have been so many resets and new continuities for G.I. Joe that it's like, well, we'll just start a new one where we do have Hawk. Mm-hmm. But since there's so many things about these two issues that sort of rub me the wrong way, by the time I do get to a really hefty, like Joe and Cobra Commander fight, and it's like, well, this is the way you'd want it to happen, right? It's like mano a mano in front of the other troops, at the climax of sort of a larger battle. Mark, help me out. Do you remember A Real American Hero 200? Is there a Duke Cobra Commander fight in that issue? I know that's the cover.
Yeah, I think that cover is played out on the interior, that there's a Duke and Cobra Commander fight similar to what we see on the cover.
And now that happens many years after this Devil's Due comic, so it's not a fair comparison. And also that's a double-sized issue, so it's not a fair comparison. But
there's also a Duke and a Hawk and a famous Hawk and Cobra Commander fight.
Oh, and 16.
Round about that. Yeah, in the teens, isn't it?
Mike Vosberg. So, of the three, Hawk or Duke and Cobra Commander sort of matchups, this one gets the bronze medal for me. It's there's a lot going on. The Joes are there, the Baroness is there, they're witnesses. I think some of this ambiguity is on purpose, and I think that's interesting. Sort of reminds me, it looks ahead to Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting's Captain America 25, right after Civil War, where Captain America is on the steps of like the Capitol in DC, and he gets killed, and everyone panics, but it's like, wait, who shot him? And like, that's the next story, right? Mm-hmm. It's like everyone was so excited to buy that issue or to be upset about that issue that I feel like when the issue came out and people are talking about the comic, everyone forgot to say, wait, who shot Captain America? I'm just throwing in a Steve Epting reference there because I know Jay will like it. But like,
Hawk isn't like really dressed for a fight, is he?
Yeah, and then like the final 3 panels, it's like no, I want Lifeline, or I guess Doc is gone. I want Lifeline or Stretcher to be the one to run up to Hawk and say, "Let me work. He's not breathing. Oh God, he's not." Because I guess that's Stalker. Meanwhile, like in those final 3 panels, I feel like someone absolutely would have run up to Cobra Commander to secure the most dangerous terrorist in history. It's like, sure, he just got shot twice, but it's like, no, remember when he said that like his helmet would blow up if you tried to take it off like 140 issues ago? Like, okay, he's lying down and there's a pistol 1 foot away from his... Oh, there's the pistol, by the way. Like, it's there after all in the final 3 panels. Like, whoever, I don't know if it's Tripwire or a Green Shirt in those final 3 panels who's running from the top. It's like, kick that gun out of the way and handcuff Cobra Commander.
Yep. Should we move on to some I Spies?
I spy with my little eye.
Okay, so here's a deep cut. I spied the muscly wrist that I talked about in the last episode. So it's on page 1, 2, 3, 4 of issue 32. The sequence before where Flint is getting very angry with Duke, and he's sort of tensing his wrist and shaking it a little bit. And yeah, very muscly wrist, putting me in mind of Frank Gomez that I mentioned before. That's just a callback to my last comment.
I spy on the cover to 31B, Talent Caldwell's cover. Major Blood is smoking a cigar. And this is 2004. And I believe by 2004, Marvel had stopped depicting all smoking in its comics. I think this was a Joe Quesada rule from a year or two earlier. James Jonah Jameson, Caucasian Nick Fury, Wolverine. And isn't there like a famous scene where like Wolverine like sort of smokes his last stogie? He like coughs and he's like, I never liked those anyway. And from then on, maybe in some Marvel Max comics later on, like a Garth Ennis Punisher or something. But so just as a comparison.
I've got some new toys.
New toys!
So new toys covered in these 2 issues include Sand Razors, which I think made a brief appearance in Badakstam previously, but I think they might possibly be a different colour. So they're sort of unveiled by Claymore underneath a black sheet. We had Overkill version 3. We have Sand Viper version 3, which was from 2004 Venom vs. Valor line. I think they were originally released as a sort of a more sort of browny, mustardy kind of colour, but they're using the kind of the darker crimson version, crimson and black version here, which are quite a cool figure actually. One of Thomas's favourites. We've got a Venom Striker ATV, which is like a sort of a 4-wheel drive quad bike thing with a kind of a gun emplacement on the back of it. Then we also have an APC transport from 2004, which is a repaint of the Monster Blaster APC. So that was similar to what happened with the Shark a couple of issues ago, where it was we saw sharks on Cobra's side and realised that they were actually not a shark, but indeed a wave crusher, which was the Cobra version of the shark. And similar to that, when the trouble bubbles are released from that thing that is on the track. I thought to myself, that looks an awful lot like that Monster Blaster APC thing. Okay, there's probably a subsequent re-released version that was on the Cobra side. Yes, there was the APC Transport 2004. Quite a cool looking vehicle, not one I ever had, but looks cool. And the last new vehicle is the Cobra Ringneck from 2003. And I was looking at this, and it didn't ring a bell at all. And I was thinking to myself initially, this is just a made-up vehicle for the comic, right? But then I had a look, and sure enough, there it was. There's this big tank thing called the Cobra Ringneck. It's quite cool. But it was just
it looks sort of like the Rage and the APC had a baby.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think that it was anything in particular. I just thought it was something that Seeley drew. It didn't stand out enough, and they didn't. That's kind of what like we said with Dart. They never really gave him a good. You didn't get to see a good look at his costume or his uniform at all. And that's the way with a lot of these vehicles. Remember when they showed the Splitfire? It was like you saw it for a second, and that was kind of highlighted, but I don't know. They didn't show like any features or anything. Remember when the Wolverine first appeared, and they were like, "Damn, that thing's got 12 missiles," and then like they used 12 missiles. Or even when Barrel Roll. Like I know, I definitely agree that you guys thought it was cool that they used the Spy Troops feature with that character, and it really was. But then on the other hand, you have the consequence of that is that other vehicles don't get any kind of recognition or at all. Like that one. Like I didn't think it was anything. I was just like, oh,
yeah. There's literally like one panel that shows a pretty good shot of it where Cobra Commando's in the sort of the turret in his big red cloak, sort of flapping out of the back of it, then out of the top of it, and then there's just a couple of other smaller shots where it's sort of driving away, and you don't really get to see it much at all. But a vehicle that wasn't on my radar at all.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that Hawk is dead? I mean, you both sound pretty sure that you think he's dead. I have not read it all ahead, so I don't know. But it seems like, I don't know, when I was reading this and I got to that page, I felt like there was another issue, and I had to look, and I was like, did I get the wrong issues? Did I just read part 4? To me, that was a huge cliffhanger. Because maybe that's just because I don't want to believe that Hawk's dead.
Yeah, I've read ahead, so I kind of can't sort of talk from a perspective of not knowing whether he is or not.
I have not read ahead, but one of the few things that I know from like looking at covers over the years and occasionally flipping through like a back issue box at my friend's house who had the Devil's Due issues, I do know how this turns out. So I can't quite put myself into how I would have felt reading this in 2004, but I will say, if he's not dead, they're going to a lot of trouble to make you think that he really is, because there's this dramatic, it's quote, camera pulling out from the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The Joes are upset. He's not breathing. Too late, just too late. Like, if he's not actually dead, I feel like the next issue, he's like sitting in a hospital bed. He's got a bandage on his chest, and the Joes are like, oh man, we sure metaphorically dodged that bullet. And they could easily do that, but I feel like it's going to some lengths to make it a big deal here. Cobra Commander, point blank. Second, the bottom half of the final page, that if he's not dead in the next issue, I feel like we might feel sort of dramatically cheated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that definitely changes my overall feeling of the story if I think that he's dead, because I was kind of, like I said, I ended on maybe a bleak hope that, like you said, the next issue Hawk will wake up in a hospital, or it'll be, oh, Hawk's in a coma. But I don't like the idea of, if it's somebody else, like Ice Cream Soldier. I mentioned him earlier, but not Hawk.
I've the balance is, if you are a writer, if you do something like this, you ramp up the stakes. You show everyone that you're serious. You show the readers that maybe no character is safe. And, if Hasbro gives you permission to do that, you might want to run with it because you feel like you can get some mileage out of putting the heroes through such a painful ordeal, and the readers. I have an I Spy. In issue 31, on page 7, we see Law, but in his Sonic Fighters colors. And I appreciate that little decision because I don't need to see Law with a oversized backpack and 4 machine guns in order for him to, quote, earn his alternate colors in an issue or a scene. I sort of feel like, Law's locker or his room, his quarters at Joe headquarters has, the 2 helmets that are the same, but then like the 2 shirts that are different color and the 2 vests that are different color and, the 2 pants that are a different color. And,
Sure.
And Chuckles only has the 1 Hawaiian shirt, but Tunnel Rat has 3 different outfits, and they're in different colors for his different variations. I also want to point out, since I have been giving Mr. Seeley's art such a hard time with these straight angles, like a lot of 1-point perspective and not enough 2-point perspective and almost no 3-point perspective, that page 7 of issue 31, where we see Law in his Sonic Fighters colors with Destro behind him, is drawn in 3-point perspective. And I feel like it's earned and helpful and a good drawing. And then I have a big I Spy that I'm very excited about, but I just want to check off 2 or 3 quick ones. Zartan has a taxidermied crocodile.
I noticed that.
And in the letters page of issue 32, there is a letter from a
Taxidermist?
From a medic, no jokes. From a medic currently deployed in Iraq, and he spends 2 paragraphs saying that he likes the character of Lifeline and that he doesn't like how Lifeline in the Devil's Due comics used as a weapon, and he feels like they should be writing him more as a pacifist. And he, this real medic in Iraq, doesn't carry a weapon.
Wow. And
the answer is, we've blended elements from the different takes, and, and the toy has a gun, and the cartoon, he doesn't use a gun, but, thanks for writing and keep reading. I thought that was a fascinating letter. I find most of the letters in a lot of comic books not fascinating because it's like a little kid saying they like things, or someone not having a problem with the comic when I have a lot of problems with the comic. And then there's another letter from someone writing about G.I. Joe Reloaded #3, and there's also a letter in the issue 31 letters page about Master and Apprentice, and I thought it's interesting that
I noticed that one.
It makes sense that the side miniseries doesn't get a letters page because those often don't, and you just shove that letter sideways into the main book, and it's maybe a way to remind the people reading the regular book, oh, by the way, yes, there's a full-page ad for Master and Apprentice issue 4 on the next page, but go read Master and Apprentice. But I do feel like, wait, Reloaded? No, that should have its own letters page. Don't take up valuable regular Devil's Due space with a letter from that other G.I. Joe comic. If the people want to read about G.I. Joe Reloaded, they can do that in a G.I. Joe Reloaded letters page. But the I Spy that I am most pleased to have found, because I feel like this is the kind of toy thing that someone who's more familiar with the toys would get. And I would just be like, Dr. Mindbender's hand is colored purple or something. Issue 32.
What is he wearing on the last page? What?
Exactly. Yes.
I thought it was going to be a toy, and I was going to be like, that was the one I just got. And I'm like, oh no, it's just a Viper outfit.
Issue 32, page 7, panel 1, The Train. That is the unproduced G.I. Joe train prototype, which fans know about because there's a photo of it in the 30th Salute trading card set from 1994. That's the train where R&D was like pitching a new GI Joe train. This one was not gonna be. Was this gonna be electric? But it was gonna be partially play school pieces. And in the photo from this trading card set, it has both the little 6-wheeled buggy from the Rolling Thunder and also the giant cannon from the Thunderclap. So either it was going to reuse some Joe pieces as well, or for like the prototype mock-up, they're still figuring out. But Tim Seeley has drawn very particularly the engine, the second car, and maybe not quite the third and fourth car, but close enough. Super fun.
Hey, you got those first two.
Super fun, Tim Seeley. Good job. Even the light, the on the next page, that panel that I didn't like, where a very, very tiny dart is helping Hawk out of the ladder hatch. There's the big spotlight, and that is part of this toy prototype.
Cool. So if you search GI Joe train prototype, you'll get all sorts of images coming up.
This is not the Tycho train that actually was put into production. And then my other, it's not quite an I Spy, is the page after the letters page of issue 32 is the Devil's Due news page. And a third of the page is a 7 paragraph sort of joke about Cobra having a convention. And it's Cobra National Convention recap. Every 4 years, some of our nation votes to choose our next president. And every 4 years, Cobra does its best to spoil that election. So there are these sort of jokey bullet points, like No Child Left Behind gets mentioned, Geraldo Rivera, NASCAR, Ralph Nader. And I think this works a lot better if you're reading this in July of 2004. Reading it this morning,
or at least have been around in July of 2004. I mean, somebody that picks it up that's, 10 or 12 is not going to mean anything to them.
But this is not to, anyone putting editorial pages together for G.I. Joe Comics, this is not to dissuade you from making topical current events dated references that may not be hilarious to me 15 years later. Please, in your Bullpen's bulletin page for Marvel, or your like Johnny DC page, or your whatever it is, DC Direct Currents page, please make some jokes about the Batcave and like the election, or Avengers Mansion, and I don't know, like the Blizzard of 2022, because they'll be fun later. That's what I'm saying when I reread these comics later.
Cool. So that's I Spy. Error detected. There was a few things that we didn't like and maybe thought could be done slightly differently, but any errors?
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
Is the ring neck, is it actually colored the right sort of gray and blue, or is it just? Oh no, it is. Okay,
it's close enough.
At this point, coloring mistakes are just.
You know what? Sorry,
coloring mistakes are just the coloring.
Yeah, the barrel roll escape scene. The whole time I'm reading that, I'm just like every panel I'm looking at it going, that's not his color. Like he's not colored like that. Just ugh.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on a negative footing, because what I meant to say was, no, I did not have any errors.
I really didn't.
Cool. No, me neither. I think this might be our first one on the Devil's Due series. Is it? Could it be?
Well, there's the gun. I guess Cobra Commander's already dropped the gun.
He could have already dropped it,
because we do see it on the next page.
Missing gun.
So we could say that's not technically an error, but I did talk about it for several minutes.
Okay. Have we got a favorite line of dialogue?
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
I thought that the a lot of the dialogue, there were sort of quotable lines. I think Brandon Joa does have a good ear for dialogue. There was a few that I thought about sort of picking. The ones that just sort of stuck out to today was the exchange between Hawk and Cobra Commander. Hawk goes, "I want you to remember this, Commander." "Oof. Yes, Hawk, I will remember. Every time I visit your grave." The laughter added by me. Does anything stick out for you guys?
Yeah, I have a best line. Page 7 of issue 31. Lady J is talking about the conditions of Destro's trial. And she says, "Oh, and by the way, he can wear the mask anywhere he wants. Apparently, it's an official historical artifact as recognized by the nation of Scotland." And then over the radio or the screen, "Just let him keep his national treasure on then. They'll love it in prison." I thought that was a very clever explanation for why this character, who you would not actually wear their mask in this situation, but we as fans want to see the mask, and maybe Hasbro as the licensor wants this character to have their signature mask. I thought that was a fun and smart explanation.
When in reality, if he's on American soil, they can say, "Screw Scotchland, we're in America."
Well, also they'd say, "Well, remember 150 issues ago when the other guy at the top of Cobra, his helmet was going to blow up if we took it off? Maybe we should make this guy take his helmet off. Maybe there's a weapon in there."
Yeah, there are all sorts of things in his helmet, aren't there? That's been established. Jay, did you? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jay, did you have a favorite line?
I don't think I had any favorite lines. I did kind of have to wonder about the "they'll love it in prison" line. Okay. I'm not going to go near that one, but I feel kind of like Scarlet when she says her and Snake Eyes can't go near it without stepping in it. I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling.
I have a question, something that we didn't go over, which I wanted to bring up. The page before the train, which is page 6. So Zartan and Mindbender are having this showdown in Zartan's compound headquarters, and Mindbender has just sort of blackmailed Zartan with this video footage of Zartan holding Xandar, and you turn the page and Zartan says, "Unfortunately, you've just opened your mouth to the wrong person." And someone in silhouette puts a knife to Mindbender's neck. And then Zartan says, "Now, let's talk about what you are going to do for me." And I wanted to know who you thought this was. Is the obvious guess that it's actually Xandar?
That's who I think it is.
Or is this a case where it's actually not a big deal who it is? It's sort of any random dreadnought who's nearby. Zartan's in control, and it's actually not supposed to be a reveal or someone important. It's just that no, you don't walk into the Viper's den without expecting to get bit, and Zartan won't be blackmailed in his headquarters.
That's kind of the way I played it in the plot breakdown. Was Mindbender goes in there to try to blackmail Zartan, but Zartan's not a person that you're going to blackmail.
But you think the silhouette is Xandar?
I think so.
And if not Xandar specifically, you think it is someone important and not just like a random...
I couldn't imagine who it would be if it would be anyone important.
Mark, have you read it?
I've not read ahead, so I don't know for sure, but I wonder, I think there's something going on with Xandar here, and if it's not him holding the knife, I think that it might be that Zartan is actually Xandar, because he's wearing this he's taken to wearing this sort of gas mask thing over his face, and possibly that is to hide his face rather than for a genuine need.
That's a good twist. I guess looking back through this, I do have a favorite line of dialogue. It's issue 31, page 10, when the Dreadnoks are eavesdropping on Cobra Commander and Zartan, and Baroness and Scalpel walk up, and one of the Dreadnoks, I think that's Buzzer, says, "Baroness, I'm shocked and appalled that you would infer such rascalous..." And Scalpel says, "Save the story, just tell us what you've heard."
Yeah, that was the one that I almost picked out.
It's like there's so much character between those two characters that I did think that was funny.
And for me, giving Seeley's art a hard time, that panel where all three Dreadnoks are leaning into the door and eavesdropping, That's great body language, great poses on them.
Yeah, fun. Cool. So I think that's almost us done. We can just wrap it up with a Yo Joage score. I'd be intrigued to see what Jay has to say, because you gave the last couple, I think, an 8. So see if we're staying on a similar sort of trajectory with these ones. With that intro, actually, let's go into it. Jay, what did you think?
Well, I think earlier Tim said that issue 31 was not his favorite, and I feel like it was probably the weakest of the whole arc. But in a way, it's almost the most vital, because it does have a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, that's where we have the Zartan possible twist there. I don't know. There's a lot that goes on there, and then the finale is good. Like I said, I had questions about Hawk, and if Hawk's dead, I don't really like that. But like you said, the story, the buildup was good. I wasn't a fan of the tension between Hawk and Duke. Like I said in the plot breakdown, Hawk is mad that another Joe pulled an operation, behind his back. Snake Eyes did the same thing, and it's like, okay, Joes don't seem to have a very good grasp of command here, and that's never been the case before. So that's kind of a point that I didn't like. I'm gonna start from 8 and go back because of that stuff to a 7.
Okay, fair enough.
It would be an 8, except for just some issues. But overall, it's like watching a movie that you really enjoyed, and you're watching it and you're into it, and then when you get away from it, you kind of think about it, you're like, well, it did have some problems. When I was reading it, I was really into it, except for the Hawk and Duke stuff. Like I said, that just took me out, and so hence the 7.
Fair enough.
So my number is going to have an asterisk next to it, like those baseball records with steroids, because I only read Devil's Due comics now, having taken performance enhancing drugs. Because the unit here is a whole comic book, and I would like to rank the whole comic book, not the first story. And I think it's totally reasonable that we're saving this backup story for a future episode. But if I was doing this in any other way, if I was blogging about this issue, these 2 issues, or writing a letter to the letters page at the time, I would also include, I would take into account my feelings about the backup story, character, color, art. And so knowing that I'm really only judging 3/4 of these 2 comic books.
Did you read that at all?
I did not read the backups.
I didn't read it at all either.
Because unlike Mark, who reads ahead and knows
cheater,
with that Baroness is married to Destro or something, I don't read ahead. So I'll say 5. It's not a 4, because I think a 4 is like much less of a functioning comic book, but it's a 5. It's a lowercase 5, because, like I said at the beginning, if I had come back to the series after to give it a second chance, I think I would have stopped here, because a lot of things aren't quite connecting.
Okay. I'll be somewhere in the middle. I think probably something like 6.5. I did enjoy it. I'm definitely looking forward to where the story is going to go. I think Tim Seeley's art a lot of the time does look nice, and I can understand why people do like his style. I think the figure work, the faces, the getting all of the details of the costumes, a lot of that, is solid. It's just a bit samey in parts, and sort of just when he pulls back and you're looking to see the rest of the details, sometimes it's either a bit too simple or missing some of the pieces that might make it a little bit more interesting visually. One of the things that probably is losing half a mark is just some of the confusion around that pivotal scene at the end of 32 where Cobra Commander and Hawk are both shot, and just the clarity of the storytelling there just wasn't quite as strong as I would have liked it to have been. I did genuinely have to stop and go back and reread that multiple times to kind of really properly get a handle on exactly what happened between those panels, and I don't think that was intentional on the part of the storytellers. But yeah, definitely still not a grateful read. A lot of good still going for it, and still very much looking forward to see where the story goes next. And we will find out where it goes next on the next issue of the Disavowed episodes of Talking Joe, when we will look at issue 33, which is titled The Road Less Travelled, along with a look at the Wraith backups, so part 1 to 3 of the Wraith backups from issues 31, 32, and 33. On the regular show, we'll be continuing to cover all of the other issues as they come out. So we've seen issue 289, The Dawn and Helix Spotlight, 290, the October Guard Spotlight, and there's the return of SL Gallant as the story continues with the drum beat down to issue 300. So that's all of the things going on. You can find out all about those things at the Talking Joe website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe, where the likes of our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin, are all getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content, like a PDF of our fancy 150th quiz special questions. Tim, where can people find you?
My brick and mortar comic book shop is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, at hubcomics.com, and I am at arealamericanbook.com, and also I'm on Facebook.
Cool. And Jay, where can people find you?
Break Room Sketches on Facebook. Best place.
And the break room's been a bit busier of late. It seems.
Yeah, I kind of had to readjust my schedule. We went from having 2 short breaks to 1 kind of longer break instead of 2 short breaks. So my goal is 1 pretty decent one a week. That's what I'm shooting for.
And most of the drawing does happen in a literal break room.
Yeah,
is that right?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Nearly all of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And the focus now, I think, like I said, is this era. I want to kind of look at these toys and take the uniforms off the molds and put them on non-bulky shoulders, and put them on a more likable figure, and let Joe fans look at it and say, all right. Kind of like what some of the 25th and the 50th, they made a lot of really cool updates just by putting them on nice figures. Like I said, a lot of those designs were always really good, so I never want to take away from the designers of the costumes, just the designers of the mold. Yeah, that's the best place to find me. Check that out for new artwork. Hopefully, a little shot every day. People get to see a progression of a small piece, if nothing else, and it's all from the era that we're talking about right now. So it's kind of the focus.
So that's us done. But remember,
nobody beats Talking Joe,
an international podcast
with a guy from England, a guy from Somerville, and a guy from the moon. Later, tomatoes. International. No, the moon's not international. That's interstellar. What am I thinking?
Well, as soon as I said international, then I thought, and now Mark's going to come on and say, and a guy from England. And I'm going to be like, well, yeah, that international kind of covers that.